We have seen the fresco from a house preserved in the volcanic eruption on Theora with one of the myriad sailing vessels that plied the Mediterranean. Some, like the merchant ship that met disaster off the Grand Promontory or Uluburun on Turkey's southern shore, carried the precious cargo that fed the complex diplomatic and commercial enterprises developing among the great powers of the era, and in fact forecasting the explosion of Mediterranean trade that we see in later Phoenician times. It is a period best captured in a single instant, caused by the tragedy that sunk the ship off the southern coast of Turkey around 1300 BC. While very little survives of the vessel's cedar planks, it is thought to have been around 49 feet long, about the size of the ship reconstructed in the galleries, and probably formed like Syrian ships depicted in Egyptian tomb paintings, one seen in the bottom on the left. We must count this as one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of our time. It came about because in 1982, a sponge diver reported finding metal biscuits with ears deep off the Grand Promontory, or Uluburun, near Kaş. He had stumbled onto the remains of the oldest known seagoing ship, which then took 11 years to excavate, with archaeologists making about 22,500 dives between 1983 and 1994. Here you see one coming upon stacks of copper ingots as they were originally stowed on the ship, just like those carried by Asiatics in Egyptian tomb paintings, and also on an open-work stand in the exhibition, which comes from Cyprus, the copper island and source of the material. All in all, there were 354 ingots, those metal biscuits, or 10 tons of raw copper, as well as ingots of raw tin, about 1 ton, which would have made 11 tons of bronze. Also on the screen are some of the other finds, including transport amphoras filled with commodities. Here you see the lifting of one of the larger containers and the terebinth resin used in scented oils and incense found in some of them. Others had olives, figs, cumin seeds, pomegranates, and spices, and one was full of a cargo of unused Cypriot pottery. One transport vessel contained glass beads, all fused together, as you see on the lower right of the screen. But glass was mostly transported on the ship in raw form. Invented just a few centuries earlier, we have a famous recipe, in fact, for making glass inscribed on a document that's in the show. By the time the ship went down, glass was transported in the form of bun-shaped ingots, more than 170 on board, in 4 colors to imitate lapis, turquoise, amber, and amethyst. Their analysis has pointed to origins for these colors in both the Near East and in Egypt. There was also ivory, a neatly sawn section of one elephant tusk, and over a dozen hippo teeth, canines and incisors, the most popular material for ivory carving throughout the Bronze Age, which along with ebony formed part of the cargo. This is just what we would expect from depictions of Nubians bringing ebony and ivory to the Egyptian court. And in a Marna letter describing the greeting gift of ebony beds, chairs, and footrests overlaid with ivory and gold from the king of Egypt to the king of Babylonia, who had sent his daughter to become his bride. These were the materials coveted to make luxury furniture. And we have looked at some of the surviving ivory plaques already that would have embellished them. There were also other items on board ship, not the standard trade cargo, but probably diplomatic gifts, such as these duck-shaped cosmetic containers, a type found around the Mediterranean, as were handles in the form of acrobats. There was also gold on the ship, the unique gold scarab of Queen Nefertiti of Egypt, and a golden chalice and pendants. While there are finished pieces, there was also scrap jewelry, some of this cut up and used as bullion, perhaps during the trip. But it is the personal belongings that have allowed the excavators to further bring the ship to life. The ship is thought to have originated on the Levantine coast, with probably 4 Canaanite merchants on board, with distinctive inlaid swords and daggers, as well as weight sets, some for bulk weighing and some for fine weighing, which conform to Near Eastern standards and shapes. And also wooden writing boards, the earliest reusable notebook with hinges to close it after writing on wax pages. Such boards, much larger and in ivory, are known in later periods in the Near East, one in the show from the Assyrian capital at Nimrud. The clay used to make some of the transport and galley wares, as well as the sandstone used for the 22 large anchors on the ship, have been traced to areas along the Levantine coast between modern Haifa in Israel and Sidon in Lebanon. But there were also pottery drinking sets of Mycenaean Greek type, like those found in tombs not far from the site of the wreckage, as well as 2 Mycenaean swords, glass beads, and seals that indicate that Mycenaean envoys may have been accompanying this voyage toward a destination on the Greek mainland, perhaps a palace such as Mycenae. And there must have been another component to the trip, with the discovery of a scepter mace from the northern Balkans, and Central European amber was on board. It is thought that the merchants wore protective amulets, in fact, those symbolizing cosmic deities such as the sun god and the moon god were found on the ship, along with one pendant depicting a nude goddess who is often identified as Astarte. There were also faience drinking vessels in the form of a ram and a female, like those found in temples and tombs and land excavations, 2 here from Cyprus. And perhaps the most poignant ritual item was the gilded bronze statue of a goddess, her hands in the gesture of blessing and protection, who sadly failed in her mission to prevent the catastrophe that, ironically, over 3,000 years later, brings this extraordinary era back to life with such immediacy. Thank you.